This week on Jerusalem Dateline, Lebanon's prime minister resigns and blames Iran for a regional power grab. After a missile strike from Yemen, Saudi Arabia accuses Iran of an act of war. Who will stop Iran's aggression in the Middle East? How will it affect Israel? Plus, a new book chronicles Israel's secret war against terror money, and Israel celebrates its 3 millionth tourists to the Holy Land. All this and more this week on Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. While it's far from the Middle East, the specter of a nuclear North Korea and its alliance with Iran concerns the Middle East. On his Asian tour, President Trump delivered a sharp warning to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Don't underestimate the United States.
I also have come here to this peninsula to deliver a message directly to the leader of the North Korean dictatorship. The weapons you are acquiring are not making you safer. They are putting your regime in grave danger. North Korea is not the paradise your grandfather envisioned. It is a hell that no person deserves. We will not permit America or our allies to be blackmailed or attacked. We will not allow American cities to be threatened with destruction.
Trump also met with China's president to discuss ways to stop North Korea's nuclear program. Addressing the Middle East, President Trump said an American Patriot anti-missile system knocked out a missile fired at Saudi Arabia from Yemen. The Saudis said the Iranian-backed Houthi rebels launched the missile at one of its international airports. The Saudis charged the missile firing could be considered an act of war. It's the latest sign of trouble between the two major countries of the Middle East. Before the missile strike, Lebanon's prime minister resigned, something Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned is a wake-up call to the world and another sign of Iran's desire to dominate the Middle East.
When Israelis and Arabs, and it's all the Arabs and the Israelis, agree on one thing, people should pay attention. We should stop this Iranian takeover.
Netanyahu spoke to the BBC after Lebanese Prime Minister Saad Hariri's surprise resignation over fear of a possible assassination attempt. Hariri resigned in a televised address from Saudi Arabia, a longtime U.S. ally that's spearheading the Arab world's campaign against Iran. He accused Iran of making a regional power grab and that Iran's powerful Lebanese proxy Hezbollah had taken over his country.
The fact that Hariri said the truth about Iran and Hezbollah is very important.
This is a clear reaction to the encroachment of Iran in the region.
Hezbollah is part of the Lebanese government, but also has more than 100,000 rockets pointed at Israel. Thousands of its soldiers also fight for Iran's ally, Syrian President Bashar Assad.
We have to admit, Lebanon is not a state. It's a unique creature which is run by Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is run by Iran. So at the end of the day, it's an Iranian tool in the Middle East, not just against Israel, but in the Middle East.
Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah accused Saudi Arabia of pushing the prime minister to resign. Hariri has led Lebanon's coalition government for about a year.
He's a Saudi citizen and he spent many of his years in Saudi Arabia, but he tried at least to work with Hezbollah. He understood there is no way to work with Hezbollah. Either you are completely under their influence or you don't have any right to exist.
Professor Ephraim Inbar of the New Jerusalem Institute for Strategic Studies says there's only one way to deal with Iran.
Probably the only way to stop them is by use of force. I think the Prime Minister probably understands that the West has no intention whatsoever to get involved. And maybe what he does is trying to gain legitimacy for Israeli unilateral actions.
Israeli analysts believe the U.S. and the West won't take a stand against Iran, and it may be up to Israel to take care of the problem. Israeli leaders realize it may be up to Israel to address the growing threat of Iran in the Middle East. Israeli Education Minister Naftali Bennett addressed these concerns when he came to the CBN News Bureau in Washington, D.C. Bennett says when you look at the Middle East big picture, you see Iran all over.
Iran basically sending its arms, sort of like an octopus, and trying to create a regional domination and subjugate the various people there. And it's the big battle of this decade, at least, between radical Islam and rational players and Israel together. And we're fighting radical Islam.
Those rational players alongside Israel include the Sunni Arab nations of Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the Gulf states. They see Shiite Iran bringing more countries under its influence. One example, Iran's defense minister said Iraq is now part of the new Persian Empire.
What we're seeing is Iran is trying to create a regional hegemony from Tehran through Iraq, Syria, and ultimately Lebanon and the Mediterranean in order to create an empire, a Persian radical Islamic empire. This would be a threat not only to the region, not only to Saudi Arabia and Egypt and the rational players and of course Israel, but to the world, because their goal is to dominate ultimately and subjugate the entire region and thereafter the world with this radical Islamic fanatical ideology. We will not let that happen.
Bennett warns any provocation by Iran's proxy Hezbollah in Lebanon would be an act of war.
We view the state of Lebanon responsible for any shooting of Hezbollah from within its territory on Israel. So to be very clear, if Hezbollah shoots rockets from Lebanon onto Haifa and Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, that is tantamount to a declaration of war between the state of Lebanon and the state of Israel, and we will retaliate. We will fight back, not only Hezbollah, but the state of Lebanon.
Bennett sees the U.S. as Israel's ally in this battle against Iran.
We know that the United States is also very clear about preventing Iran from becoming a regional empire. My message to the American people is Israel is strong. Israel is trying to be a light upon nations. We're in a tough location. We're surrounded by hundreds of millions of radical Islamists who want to destroy not only Israel, but much of the world. So by strengthening Israel, in fact, we're strengthening the free world, because Israel is at the forefront of the battle between medieval Islam and modernity and the free world, and we will win.
On Capitol Hill, the House of Representatives held a hearing on the challenges and opportunities involved in moving the United States Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Relocating the embassy would not adversely affect negotiations over Jerusalem's final status or the broader Middle East peace process, nor would it impair our diplomatic relations among predominantly Arab or Muslim nations. In fact, by its honest recognition of reality, shifting the embassy would have an overall positive impact for U.S. diplomatic efforts.
Coming up, see how Israel began a secret war against terror money. When you think about the war against Islamic terror, you may think about a Navy SEAL team or a drone strike. But what about an attack on a bank or sting operation? In her new book, Harpoon, Nitzana Dashand-Leitner describes a secret war against the lifeblood of any terror organization, money. We talked with Leitner in our Jerusalem studio.
Harpoon is the untold story of a secret unit in the intelligence services in Israel. It was created by the legendary former head of the Mossad, Meir Dagan, who realized that in order to fight and destroy the terror organizations, you must go after their financial infrastructure. And he created this unit and gave them a directive: follow the money, target the money, kill the money.
How successful was Harpoon?
Very successful. First of all, they were able to separate Arafat from his money. They were able to separate the leaders of the Hezbollah from their money. What this unit, Harpoon, did is trying to tackle the Hezbollah finance system by first bombing their banks from the air. I mean, it was the first time that during a war, you don't target the militant, you don't target the soldier, you target their bank. And that caused Hezbollah during the war a devastating harm, because not only they lost all their money, they lost the computers that had the information where the money is. And I think the best proof that this financial warfare succeeds is the Iranian agreement. The mere fact that Iran went down on its knees and for the first time agreed to negotiate an agreement with the United States and the UN and the other nations is only due to financial pressure. And this financial pressure began in Israel. It started with this unit.
This is a whole new front in the war against Islamic terror, is that right?
Absolutely. The Islamic terrorism relies on funds. Money, in the end of the day, is the oxygen to the terrorism. And if you stop the flow of the money, you can stop the flow of the terrorism. And it became a new frontier because they understood that money can kill.
We're talking about people's lives, aren't we?
100%. In the end, it's also the story of the victims, because the victims are the players in these lawsuits. They are the one who have to file this lawsuit. No other one person can do it. And indeed, no money can bring back life, and no money can heal a devastating wound. But the money gives a measure of justice to the terror victims, gives them a measure of closure, and give them a way to fight back.
But you're also preventing future attacks. Is that true as well, when you're blunting their source of money?
Right. When we file lawsuits against banks, no bank agreed anymore to open bank account to a designated terror organization. It's too risky. It's not worth their while.
When you realize that you're stopping future terror attacks and saving lives, how does it make you feel?
Look, we live in Israel. And we want to send our kids to school and make sure they're coming back safe. We want to sit in our cafes and ride our buses and shop in our malls, and we want to live safely in our country. So in order to do that, we must take any step we can, utilize any tool we have, and fight in all fronts in order to make sure that we will live safely in our country. This is our country and the only one. And by knowing that with these legal lawsuits, I was able to give compensation to the victims and also perhaps prevent the next attacks, that makes me a very proud Jew, a very proud Israeli.
Would you call Harpoon one of Israel's startups?
Absolutely. Perhaps the greatest startup of them all. It was so innovative, it was so creative. And, you know, it's the Israeli brain to come and to utilize this sort of system. And from something very, very small, today they became not big enough in Israel, but big in the entire world. Their tactics and strategies are adopted by every Western country.
What does the West need to know about this war on Islamic terrorism?
A major way to stop this Islamic terrorism is start a financial warfare against them, because it works. A terror organization is like a corporation, it's like a company. They need money. And the advantage is that 1 foot of the terror organization is in the terror world, but 1 foot is in the legitimate world. And this is where you can tackle them. And this is how you can really bring Islamic terrorism to an end. But it has to be done by all the nations.
Up next, Israel honors Christian volunteers who come to serve the Jewish state. When Israel's education minister Naftali Bennett visited our Washington, D.C. studio, he told CBN News what it means as an Israeli to have the support of the American people.
As an Israeli who lives in Israel, who has his family in Israel, knowing that there's tens of millions of good Americans who care for us, who are fighting our fight, who are giving us backwind, it means the world to us. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the good people of America that are out there for Israel.
Here in Israel, a special ceremony in Israel's parliament, the Knesset, honored the thousands of Christian volunteers who come to support Israel. The event took place, according to the Jewish calendar, on the 100th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration by the British government, advocating the establishment of a homeland for the Jewish people. Knesset member Sharon Haskell organized the event and told CBN News why she appreciates Christian volunteers.
It's just an amazing feeling because throughout history, Israel didn't have many, or Jews in general didn't have many people who supported, who helped them. It's only few individuals, and have a room full of people, heads of organization, to support Israel, to love and pray for us. I cannot explain what an incredible feeling that is.
We are here today to express our gratitude to the friends of the people of Israel from all around the world, Gentiles who have given their time and their effort to volunteer in honor of the state of Israel, in honor of the people of Israel, in honor of God.
Knesset Speaker Yuli Edelstein said the Bible makes the difference for these volunteers.
There is something very moving. I'm trying to put myself in your shoes.
He added volunteering in Israel puts you inside the Bible.
It's like in all these kids' movies, you like move inside the Bible. You're right there inside the screen with the vineyards again in Samaria, in the Shomron area, and with young and old sitting in the streets of Jerusalem. All of a sudden, you're not watching the movie. You are part of the movie. You're inside the book doing things.
Dean Bai oversees Return Ministries, an organization dedicated to bringing Jews back to the land of promise.
And here we are in the Knesset, in the seat of government, and I believe where the Jewish people themselves, the Israelis, are saying, hey, thank you. They're reciting scripture to us, we're reciting scripture back to them, and we're all identifying and recognizing that God is doing something miraculous, and there's a part for the Israelis, and there's a part for those of us from the nations.
The Knesset singled out the work of HaYovel, a ministry dedicated to bringing in the grape harvest in Israel's biblical heartland. They came 13 years ago and realized what they were doing was in the Bible.
Well, Tommy and I got on a plane on the way home, and I'm reading in Amos where it says, you'll grow gardens, and you'll plant vines, and you'll tend them. And I'm like, Tommy, we could do this.
Since then, HaYovel has brought hundreds of volunteers to Israel, and Waller hopes more will come.
As Christian leaders that are bringing people here as volunteers, that we need more feet. The prophet Isaiah says, how beautiful are the feet who bring good news, who come to Israel and say to the Jewish people, say to Israel, your God reigns.
Christian leaders see their work as a fulfillment of prophecy.
We see it with our own eyes. With Jeremiah 31:5, it says that you will yet plant vines in the mountains of Samaria. And so we see the vines right there. And then Isaiah 61 verse 5 says that strangers will come and be your vine dressers and your plowmen. And so we get to be those foreigners, those people from the nations coming in and supporting the nation of Israel in the agriculture.
We are here an express fulfillment of what God's word in Zechariah says. When God will bring the Jewish people back from all the countries where he scattered them and bring them back to this enormous moment, the time to favor Zion. Yes, the set time has come.
The event ended with the singing of Israel's national anthem, Hatikva, the Hope. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem. Israel is set to hit an all-time tourist record this year, with well over 3 million visitors to Israel in 2017. Take a look at what Israel did to mark that milestone.
Oh my God, I'm sorry for this outfit. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. A special guide.
Why not? This is called David's Citadel. King David is over there. You cannot see it. This is the Temple Mount. The Jewish holiest site is the Western Wall, which is, you cannot see it. It's below here, but I recommend that you go there.
We will go for sure. We have to see it.
You have to taste Jerusalem. This is the most important part. Zata.
Wow.
I like
have
Zata.
a secret.
In my country, it's called Chimbru.
Chimbru.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's Zata. Because when we are here, we said we have to do this. And it's something that for our country is very important, and also for the Christian people. They know about the tomb and everything else, and they want to come and visit. We are standing on Roman stones. They are more than 2,000 years old. It's an honor to be here and feel this.
I'm sure this couple had no idea what would happen to them during their first visit to Israel. And if you haven't already, perhaps you too can come and visit Israel. Well, that's all for this edition. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.